Welcome to everybody that's now joined, and a special welcome to my two great friends from LYCiG, Harry, who comes to us from St Albans, that huge diocese of urban deprivation, which we need to feel sorry for up here in Leeds, and Ruth from York. It's great to have you both with us. And to everybody, I just want to give a little introduction here and say, I wonder what you feel about Christmas. I'm a vicar, I'm back in a parish, and to be honest, my first thought was, wow, this is a massive piece of work that I've got to do. A really big job on my job list. And a little bit of me thinks, here we go again, it's the normal routine, I've done it 40 odd times, this is the year 2020 Christmas. And this year in lockdown, I'm thinking, this is going to make life even harder. This is almost, I wish we could skip this. So can I say at the beginning of this webinar, it is about really making Christmas, Christmas. I need to make Christmas for the community in which I now operate, the place of Carvelet. I need to help a real Christmas happen for the members, not just of the community, but of the congregation. They are the Jesus family. But also, as part of all that, I need a Christmas happening for me. It's not routine. It's not the 40th time I've done it. This will be the only time I will ever do Christmas in 2020. And I just think we need to really be aware of the wonderment. This is a verse, this is when the three kings come to Jerusalem. Where is the child who has been born? What a sentence. Where is the child who has been born? We observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage. For me, that verse just encapsulates the deep, deep mystery and wonderment and light and joy and life transformingness and paying of homage, worship inspiringness that is included in this great Easter. My prayer is that in the community of Carvelet, we do something in the church there, even if people don't come, but they will know someone has been born, a star has appeared. My prayer for the congregation is that Jesus comes afresh. And my prayer for me is that I stop thinking about all the stuff I know about Christmas. And just as if it was the first time ever, I see a star appearing. Let's pray. Then I'm going to hand over to Harry and Ruth. Where is the child who has been born? Where is this child who has been born? Lord Jesus, our prayer today and our work today and the whole of this session today is we long to see you being born afresh in our individual hearts, in our churches, and in our local communities, our parishes. And I pray this morning, Lord, in great faith and expectancy, that every one of us here will gain lots of ideas, but not so much ideas, just one or two really important things where you say, take this home and put it into practice. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Right, so Harry and Ruth are going to do the first three big tips. Then, as Richard says, we'll have time for one or two questions of them, and then we'll put you into little groups to talk about them. Harry, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share with you this morning. As Robin said, I'm in the Diocese of St Albans, which is, but I'm currently in North Hertfordshire. which is quite sunny this morning. And I work half-time for Leading Your Church into Growth as an Associate Director. I also work half-time for the Diocese of St Albans as a Church Growth Officer. And in my spare time, I look after House for Duty, 2 little parishes, very rural parishes. I'll tell you how rural they are. We did a Zoom service for Remembrance on Sunday just gone, and one of our congregations was zooming into the service from their tractor as they drilled the fields and planted the seeds. I've never had that before, but it was wonderful. And so as a rector of 2 parishes, I'm perhaps feeling some of the things that Robin's spoken about, and you are as well, which is, as we look forward to Christmas, we know that this Christmas is going to be unlike any other. The difficulty is we're not quite sure what it will be like, and where we'll be, what stage of lockdown, and how significant or severe that lockdown will be. But the 7 steps practical steps we want to give to you, present to you for your consideration today, I think will work in most situations, particularly with a bit of contextualizing them. And everything that we're going to say, we've got a handout for, and we'll make that available at the end of the core. You may even have already seen it if you're signed up to the Leading Your Church into Growth monthly email newsletter. It was on there. But the first point, the first thing that we want to encourage you with this morning is for you to, number 1, consider who you will invite to Christmas and how you will invite them. Number 1, consider who you will invite and how you're going to invite them. Normally at Christmas, people want to come to church for some Christmas service, and usually we've inherited a pattern of Christmas services that probably dates back to the Doomsday Book or something. And people just know in your parish that if they go to the church building in the middle of the parish, the building with a pointy thing on top of the roof, at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve, there will be a service, or 5 o'clock, or whenever it is. They roughly know what will happen. And everyone squeezes in, and they have a wonderful candlelight and Christmassy experience, and hopefully they hear something of the good news of Jesus Christ. That's what normally happens. But we know that this year there will be no squeezing in. A best case scenario is that our churches will be open but socially distanced. I suppose a worst case scenario will be that our church buildings won't be allowed to be open. I hope that's not true. But whichever of those situations we're in, it really pays to consider who we will invite and how we will invite them. Squeezing in, people just turning up last minute, it can't happen that way. So we're going to need to work a little bit harder on careful invitation, in good time as well, letting people know what is happening, when it's happening, whether that's online or in the buildings, and also if they need to book into the services. So I'm thinking that we need to get printed material delivered to homes in good time, if that's something that's practically possible in your parish. We need to be good with our social media, digital invites for the congregation to pass on to others, create a little graphic for WhatsApp and WhatsApp it to your contacts and say, hey, use this to invite others. All that kind of stuff is going to be really, really important this year, and very important to do it in good time. So the first point, that's just a very practical point, is who are you going to invite to your Christmas services and how will you invite them? And it's worth just brainstorming a few little points, action points for that, to make sure that that begins to happen in good time. That's point 1. Over to Ruthie.
Hello, yes, my name's Ruthie. I'm a curate here in York, and I've just come back off maternity leave about 4 weeks ago. So I've come back to a very different church to the one that I just left. So I had a baby in December last year. We were very nervous that it was going to be the 25th, but he ended up being kicked out a bit early and ended up on the 13th. So hopefully he won't spend his birthday for the rest of his life at a carol service or something like that. We might actually be able to have a party for him. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. My second point that I'm going to talk about now is have a good online guest service for Christmas. this is probably something that you've thought about already and what you're planning on doing, but just to give you a couple of things about it. I think lots of people have found it's suddenly a lot easier to go to church online than it is to go in person. As I said, I've had a baby in December, and it was all lovely and joyous, and we managed to go to church for a couple of months before lockdown happened. But ever since then, we've been watching church at home during the lockdown. And oh my gosh, it has been absolutely amazing. It's the best. I can go to church in my pajamas, have breakfast, my son can make noise, can wander about without anyone going, oh, the curate's son's being a bit noisy. It's been so much easier for us. And if I'm lucky, quite often my son Ben times a nappy just in the middle of a sermon, so I can scoot off and deal with that for a bit. So I can see the appeal so much of why you would want to be at home instead of in a church. And so we need to be doing stuff online. You probably have been doing this kind of thing already, whether you've been doing services over Zoom, whether you've been using Facebook Live, YouTube, Instagram, pre-recorded videos, whatever it might be. We need to do good guest services and make sure that the word is out there, like Harry said, about inviting. Make sure it's planned well. And I think what's going to be really, really important this year is that we give people a bit of joy. I feel like, at the beginning of lockdown, there were lots of things going on, and now there's not as many things that are happening for people out there. And so the joy has just completely been sapped out of this year. So do something that is full of joy, because people need it. And we've got this rhetoric going around at the moment that Christmas is cancelled, it's all a disaster. It's not cancelled at all. Christmas is just going to be different. And actually, I'm really excited about that, because perhaps for some of you in your churches, this might be the clean slate that you can have to get rid of that service that really wasn't really working and took so much time and energy. Perhaps now there'll be a chance to do it in a different way, in order to invite lots of different people and to use your time a bit well. So, for example, my church, we're going to do quite a few different things, but one of the things that we are going to do is film a more traditional 9 lessons and carols, because we know how important that'll be to some of the older members of our congregation, and that's what Christmas is for them. And so we're going to get members of the choir to be recorded, so it's actually their voices that we hear, and it's all going to be created together in a video, so it's just straight on YouTube. There'll be other stuff that we're doing live, but that's one of the things that we're doing. You've probably got lots of this planned already, but make sure that you have a good online service. I'm going to hand back over to Harry for point 3.
Great, thanks, Ruth. Our third point is one of the more challenging ones, I suppose, which is to look ahead to what's next. These have been pretty exhausting times for us, as with the different lockdown restrictions, we've all had to learn new technology. We've had to wrestle with new ways of being church and doing church. It's been quite emotionally tiring with the ups and downs, and helping and supporting people in different ways in all that. And when it's been that already, when we put Christmas on top of that, which we know is quite an exhausting time for the lay and ordained, for paid or volunteers in the church, then we know it's going to be really a busy period. But if we can, it's going to be, I think, that it's going to be very worthwhile considering what happens next after Christmas. So we've talked about who we're going to invite and how we're going to invite them. We've talked about how people find it easier to come online. So if you take the fact that so many guests come to our Christmas service, if you multiply that by the fact that there'll be an online service, you could have, exponential amounts of people visiting your church for an online service, maybe more than you've ever had to any of your services before. And so the thought is, how might you use that for a good strategy moving forward to invite them to something else? So despite all the busyness and all the emotional weariness that Christmas can bring, do look after yourselves in that, do make space, do have a good day off. but it's worth spending a little bit of time just sitting down and thinking, all right, what's going to happen next? What can we do in those online services to create a longer contact with these people? What can we invite them to? Do we ask them to send us a message on Facebook? Do we invite them to a start course that we're running in Epiphany, which is a great time to run a start course or an online alpha? Do we have some kind of coffee morning online where, you know, a week after Christmas, we gather people online? Whatever it might be, think about this fantastic opportunity of gathering people online, of doing Christmas in a really new way, and in which you could have hundreds, even more than hundreds of people in your service, and just say, how is this part of our larger strategy? How can we announce to people what's going to happen next? How can we invite them to the next thing? How can we use their contact and their enthusiasm at this time to invite them to church on a journey, not just a once a year they've turned up at Christmas, but for them to become part of our church families in a deeper, more meaningful way? Might even be just telling people, hey, book your christenings for your kids, or, you know, anything like that. Just think of the ways that we can use Christmas and really extend that invitation. Right, those are our first 3 points. Very quickly, who are you going to invite and how will you invite them? Number 2 was have a really good online guest service. And number 3 was look ahead to what's next. Use your guest service to plan ahead. Robin, I'm going to ping this back to you and you're going to tell us what we're doing now.
Right, Harry and Ruthie, thanks so much. 3 crystal clear different issues there. And first of all, if we just get them fixed in our mind, who we invite, have a good online guest service, look ahead to what's coming up after Christmas. I've got 3 things that I'm already looking ahead to. One is New Year, which I think we often ignore in the church, but what a great opportunity to just send a New Year message to all the people that came to your Christmas services. Epiphany, which Harry mentioned, and just a little bit later on, beginning of February, it's a wonderful thing to think about. Candlemas, which has largely been an Anglo-Catholic type of service. I don't know why, because it's utterly beautiful and to my mind, and in Carvely, we're making Candlemas our big follow-up to Christmas. Right, we can take 2 or 3 questions. So if somebody wants to ask a question, what do they do, Richard? They ping a blue hand up or something.
Yeah, so the ideal would be if you know how to use the raise hand feature, that would be the best way to indicate. But if failing that, you can put something in the chat and I'll pick it up there as well.
Okay. So let's take 2 or 3 questions from people. Now, there's two possibilities here. One is that Harry and Ruthie have done such a fantastic presentation that
I think that's very likely. But Maureen.
Yeah, Maureen's waving her hand frantically.
Maureen.
Yes, thank you. Just a question. Are we today just thinking about online connection with people? And the supplementary question is, if we're not, or if we are, what do we do about the many people who don't access online worship, can't access online worship, and particularly in some of my congregations, that's a substantial number. And so we're trying to think not only about online, but also about creatively using the space outside church as a kind of means of engagement and display or something. So I just wonder whether that's something that's coming up later on, or whether this is focusing really on the online stuff, which is good, but just a question.
Yeah.
What are we inviting people to?
Exactly. I think hopefully all these points will be applicable to both online and not online. So if you're running an online service, who are you going to invite and how will you invite them? They'll need to know the Zoom code or the Facebook page, blah, blah, blah. When you're doing stuff other than online, it's the same thing really. So in our parish, we're anticipating that the buildings will be open, but because of social distancing, we'll be repeating services. So we'll have the same service 2 or 3 times, so that the 200 or so people who want to come can fit in. So we just need to think, who are we inviting to that and how will we invite them? Because they need to know that they need to pick a service, that each of the services will be the same. They need to know how to book on. So we can't, we're going to, send out publicity through the social media, and we're going to flyer drop the parish, all that kind of stuff. We're going to let them know, for those who don't, who will be shielding in their homes, but don't have internet, where we'll point them to all the Church of England services, both the dial on the phone, but also the stuff that will be happening on TV. They come up a bit later using the Church of England Comfort and Joy, which has just gone live, their resources. We'll talk about that in a moment. And equally, we'll talk a bit about as well all the good ideas that are out there around stuff like, in our villages, we're doing an advent calendar that's spaced around the village. People can look at the different windows and all that kind of creative stuff. So yeah, definitely not just about online, but hopefully all these principles will apply to whether it is an online service or if it's not an online service. Same issues apply, I think.
Thank you. Another question.
Robin, Paul Cartwright wants to ask a question.
Paul?
Thanks, Robin. Just a quick one, really. People, when we're talking about online services, one of our main services that we have at Christmas is Christingle, and I'm just wondering if there's any wisdom about that, and also how we protect safeguarding in relation to young people online. If there's any wisdom about that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, the word wisdom leaves us speechless, Paul. Have we got any wisdom, you two?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard because different parishes are so different, aren't they? Depends on the size of your population and how many might come. We're doing Christingle we're doing build your own Christingles. And we're putting them in the bags that the Children's Society provide, paper bag, and we're going to make them available basically on the Rectory Drive for a period of time, hopefully, when it's not raining, or inside the church porch, and invite people to collect them over a few days and then build them at home and have them ready for an online Christingle service, which we'll do. We're going to do ours on Zoom because we're going to try and promote a bit more interactivity with it. I know you can have interactivity on Facebook and YouTube as well, but we just find Zoom easier. So that's what we're going to do. Also, I've spoken to my local school and said, look, it's going to be hard for Christingle. Can I do Christingle safely in the school? And they think that I probably can. So I'm taking the Christingle back into the school and doing it for each year group. Someone's logged into the chat now, the Children's Society How to Christingle Virtually Guide, which is very helpful.
Yeah, I was in a Zoom, it was a different webinar with the Children's Society just the other week, and they've got loads of resources to help do an online Christingle. But yeah, have a look at their stuff because they've got lots of stuff and it's brilliant.
Well, there you've got online and school, but actually, in our church, we are also planning to do 2 Christingles in church. Once again, the numbers will be lower. We'll have to social distancing, but anyway, it gives you different options. We can take one more question.
Yeah, we've had. I know there's been a few in the chat, and there's a few sort of questions. I suppose that the first one would be Nigel. Well, just to say, a couple have sort of made the point about dialing services. So Brian, for example, has said that this is his main type of services, and it's great because you don't need internet for that. So thanks for that, Brian. But then Nigel Priestley, he said, can you expand more on invitation and how we log the people who may wish to attend? So I suppose Harry or Ruth, if you've got any ways that you do that.
We've used Eventbrite for lots of stuff. So we did on Halloween night, we did a pumpkin trail, and families had to book in to do a trail round different houses to look at pumpkins that we put out that told the story of Jesus calming the storm. And by using Eventbrite, we were able to get everyone's details, which we have to keep for a certain number of days and things like that. So that's one of the ways that we've helped to log people, and it'll limit numbers as well. And for some of our services that we've got, hopefully coming up in person, but with all this, we have no idea what the government guidelines will be. We're kind of planning in the hope that we can do stuff, but we don't know yet, do we? We'll be using Eventbrite for that as well, so that we have people's details.
Eventbrite's great, and there are others as well, actually, that are similar to Eventbrite. We're quite an elderly in terms of average age population of the parishes, so we're doing an old school method. We're letting people know who to phone between certain hours. Phone this number between 6 and 8 in an evening if you want to come to one of our physical services, and then that person's got a map of the church and is just writing names on and booking them in bubble groups, because a lot of our folks would struggle with Eventbrite. So there's like low tech and high tech, and there's free and stuff you can pay for. The stuff that you can pay for is probably easier and spits out stuff better, but you have to pay for it, and it's all a sliding scale on there. But that is one of the headaches of administration for physical services this year, to get the help of someone in your congregation to do that if you can. Right.
For anybody like me who really wants to do serious sort of low tech, old-fashioned invitation, I've got 3 things. First of all, I spend a day in the parish. I wander around, and I find in times of lockdown, people love just saying hello and smiling and have a little chat. So I will just personally give out lots of invitation cards. Secondly, I will encourage every member of our church to invite one person, just one. And thirdly, I've already got my own invitational list. I've got 8 names on this list, people that I've picked up in the last few weeks, and these are my priorities. Now, I realise this sounds like something out of the Stone Age, but that's somehow how some of us still operate. So you've got high tech with Eventbrite, and low tech with just wandering around, smiling and chatting and giving people an invitation card, and 101 things in between. Right, everybody, I think we're all back now, and we're going to go into our second series of presentations, and I think Ruth is going to start us off.
Yeah, so I hope those breakout groups were really helpful. It's lovely to see in the chat that you're talking to each other, to say thank you for that. So hope you got some good ideas from there as well. Point 4 is use available resources, save time, and then do the personal touch. If you're there panicking, thinking, I'm not techie, I haven't got a clue how to do any of this, don't worry, there is loads of stuff out there to use. A church near you, her resource hub, has got loads of stuff there available, including hymns at the moment, but there are going to be carols that are available in the near future. And there's also the Comfort and Joy campaign that the Church of England are doing. I don't know if any of you have seen that stuff already. There's lots of material that's being created, and daily prayer and all this kind of stuff. So use those resources. Don't try and reinvent the wheel, especially at the moment. If there's stuff out there that's good, go and use it. Use it, but adapt it to work within your community. So whether you're in a community where everything's online, or whether you're doing stuff in person or on the phone, use the material to work for what you're doing. Harry's already mentioned it, I think, that they're planning on repeating services when they do in-person carol services and stuff like that. That is completely fine. Do the exact same service again and again and again. Don't feel like you need to shake it up, because there'll be lots of people who want to come to these kind of things, but we can only have them in small numbers. We're going to have to book in people and use track and trace and all that kind of thing. So just repeat it. If you've got multiple churches, repeat the same service. And with all that extra time that you've managed to save by doing the same services in different locations, sit down, have a mince pie, have a brew, watch a Muppet Christmas Carol, as it is the greatest of the Christmas films. Relax and take time for yourself. Thank you, Graham. Graham agrees with me. It's been a really, really hard year. My husband's also a curate, so I've kind of seen it from his end. And then now coming back from maternity leave, I had my first morning of Zoom meetings, and oh my goodness, it is exceptionally dull, isn't it? Not this one, of course. This one is brilliant and full of dynamism. But I needed a nap afterwards. It was so exhausting. And they've done loads of research about why we find Zoom so exhausting. It's been really hard. We've been thrust into doing things in a completely new way. And so please do not feel guilty if you need to step back, do less and repeat stuff. Take time to have a break and have a rest. And very, very importantly, please do not compare yourself with others. To the church up the road who are doing that live in-person nativity with fireworks and all this kind of business, that's what they're doing. You know your patch. You know what works well for them. It doesn't matter. You're a different parish and you will serve the people that you know and love there in whatever way works best for your patch. So use resources, save time, add that personal touch to it, and remember, be easy on yourself and give yourselves a break. Over to you, Harry.
Thanks, Ruth. We're on to step 5 now. Just before I get into this, there's some good chats, questions coming into the chat. The questions are fitting into probably one of 2 categories: technical questions and not technical questions. We just had a technical one from Carolyn. We have got an archdeacon on the call now, and I would point you in Paul's direction for some of these. From being from a different diocese, I don't want to give you advice where your diocese is taking a different line and either being a bit more relaxed or even a bit stricter. So I wouldn't want to answer those, but your archdeacons will know all about those. And maybe we'll answer it when we get to questions in just a moment. Point number 5 is to develop engaging worship. Now, the point about this point is that it's not really Christmas or Advent specific, but it's something that we need to do all the time, in all ways and in all places. One of the things that in my diocesan role in St Albans, I keep getting asked is, how do we grow in a time of COVID? How do we do evangelism in a time of COVID? How do we do a culture of invitation in a time of COVID? How do we do? And my answer is, in a non-pastorally expressed way, is always you do it like you did before COVID. You have to change it a little bit. How you do it will be different, but in a sense, the what you do remains the same. If you had a culture of invitation before, then you invite in the same way. It just might be to a dial-up service or to a socially distant service, but the invitation remains the same. And if you were very good at welcoming before, then be good at welcoming now, but you just have to change it a little bit because you're online and doing things in different ways. And at this time of pandemics and shutdowns and socially distancing and all that kind of stuff, some things remain relevant. And one of the things that remains relevant is to have a review of your worship. And some of the online stuff has really helped us with this. Our worship might have got a bit punchier, a bit snappier, a bit shorter. And we might think, oh, those things are actually quite good. Maybe when we're back in our buildings, we don't want a 35-minute sermon again. We quite like the 10-minute sermon. Maybe we don't need 6 hymns and 2 anthems. Maybe we can have it a little bit briefer so that people can engage with it. Whatever it might be, is to keep thinking about developing your engaging worship. If in this time of Advent that we're moving into and then Christmas, if that's all piling up on you, then maybe just take a little step back and think, all right, what should we do for Easter? How can we have some really good worship around Easter time? How can we begin to plan for that now? It's really important that good, inspiring, engaging worship is not about churchmanship we're not peddling a theology here. We're not saying you need to be happy clappy or you need to be bells and incense. It doesn't really matter which style it is. What matters is doing your particular style of worship well, reviewing it, constantly asking questions and saying, not asking the question, not what have we always done, but what will work, what will help people to draw closer to God. And not just the people in church, but actually what will help those who don't yet come to church draw closer to God. So at this time of Christmas and Advent, lots of visitors, lots of potential. It's really important that we develop engaging worship for Advent, for Christmas, and take that forward beyond as well into Lent and Easter. Ruth.
Fab. Point 6 then is practice fruitful evangelism. This year especially, I think we've seen people who are desperately looking for that silver lining in life at the moment. People are desperate for hope, and we've seen that with Clap for Carers, with people doing online stuff like Joe Wicks, online Zooms, Captain Tom Moore, and all those other little stories that we've heard of people doing good things in a time of unprecedented misery, it seems. And as Christians, we are the people of hope. We are the ones who are to be that light in dark places. And there are so many people who are desperately searching for a bit of that at this moment in time, especially. So now is a great time to be practicing fruitful evangelism. And we're going to talk about 2 ways to particularly do that. First of all, use invitations to invite people to join into your worship. Whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's online, whether it's in person, make sure you have really nice invitations. Again, whether that's online or paper invitations, have it nice and to bring a bit of joy to people's lives. We've done for the past couple of years, we've done a competition with my church for people to draw an image that we use on our publicity for social media and for our Christmas cards and our church magazine and all this different kind of stuff. And the thing that I'm most proud of, I think, is that we now get more adult entries than children's entries. And it's been really lovely to send these personal drawings to the school, to people in the parish, just to have this bit of hope that's given out to people. We got a really beautiful image this year that is a drawing of our church and someone walking up to the door and they're saying, "Can I join your bubble?" And that's going to be used in lots of our advertising this year. Secondly, give people a chance to respond to the message of hope that we're giving. In your services, invite people to go further on that journey. Harry said about doing an online inquiries course like Start or Alpha or Christianity Explored. Invite people along to that. Have that follow-up. Or as Robin's saying about Candlemas, why don't you use that as a really great opportunity to invite people to come back for a bit more? And point to resources that people might find useful. So things like daily prayer, try praying. There are lots of different things that we can point people to help them step on that journey. And if you can get people, ask people, if this is made you think about faith a bit more, do leave your number or say you want to be contacted, and use the chance to ring folks to talk about faith and the journey. I've been ringing around people as our pastoral care tree, and I found that people have been a lot more open to me on the phone, probably because I can't see their face, and so they're able to say more stuff than they thought they were previously. So now is a really fruitful time for evangelism. So use your services that you're doing to use that opportunity and spread a bit of hope with people. And over to Harry for the last point.
Well done, folks. We're on to our last point, point number 7, step number 7. Again, it sounds familiar, I hope, and it's just to reiterate that at time, whatever the season, Christmas, Advent, whatever the season, or whatever is happening in the world, pandemics or not pandemics, some things remain important and always relevant. And so point number 7 is to pray for growth. Pray for growth. How you do that now will be different, and will have to change. But what ought not change is the fact that we're doing it as individuals and as churches, is to pray specifically for growth. Invite your PCC to a focused service of compline online and say, let's pray for our churches that we have really good Christmas services, however they happen. Make it an element of your daily office, be that online or over the telephone or whatever else. Yourself, take the opportunity to pray for the growth of your church. Encourage your church wardens. Do WhatsApp prayer triplets or something where we're actually saying, let's pray for the growth of our church at this time when we could be concerned, when we could be worried about who's coming back and when they're coming back, to just say, let's pray about it. Let's offer our fears and worries to God. Let's offer our hopes and our aspirations to the Lord, and let's spend some time praying for the growth of our churches. We know, don't we, that Jesus said to his disciples, the harvest is huge, but there are only a few workers. So ask the Lord of the harvest to send workers out into his harvest field. Let's pray that in this time of Advent and Christmas, being aware that we might be part of the answer to that prayer. When we pray that the Lord would send harvesters out into the field, that might be you. So that's it, folks. Those are our 7 steps. Step number 1 was consider who you're going to invite and how you'll invite them. Step number 2 is have a great online guest service. That doesn't mean that you're not doing stuff online. It just means that we've seen that more people do come online, more of the fringe, and more of the fringe come at Christmas. Multiply those together and you could have massive online guest services. Number 3 was look ahead to what's next. Make this part of a larger plan and strategy of growth and evangelism. Use the resources there to save time and then to rest in that time. Develop engaging worship as you move ahead. Number 6 is practice fruitful evangelism. Think about how you can use these opportunities. And point 7 was just to pray for growth. Pray for all this. Offer it to the Lord in prayer. Reverend Robin Gamble, over to you.
Thank you, Harry and Ruth. Wearing my vicar's hat now, I look here at 7 big tips, and they're all great, but I think, I can't do everything. So I'm just thinking, of all these 7, was there 1 or maybe 2 things that God really rang my bell and said, make sure this happens in Carvely? Really? So before we do any more talking, why don't we all take just a moment of quietness, reflect over the 7 steps. Inviting people, online guest service, looking ahead to what's next, use resources, engaging worship, good ongoing evangelism, praying for growth. I wondered if there was 1, 2 things in particular. Out of that list of 7. Okay, we've got a bit of time, so once again, we can take 2, maybe 3 questions.
Karen, sorry, are you wanting to ask a question?
Yes, please, because I haven't a clue how to use the wave button wherever that is. I wondered, because I tend to do all this sort of creative things in our church, I wondered how you did the Advent calendar trail.
So we had quite a long discussion about 2 different ways of doing it. One broader and that might involve more people, and one that was a bit more focused. So the broader way was just to do almost, although it would be Advent themed, for it to almost be like the Find a Bear stuff. I don't know if you had that in your area early in the lockdown. We certainly did. So the idea would be to get the message out to all our contacts, however that might be, and say we want to do an Advent theme and in people's windows. and to split it up into the 4 weeks of Advent. And so in week 1, you just put up Mary. In week 2, you have Mary and Joseph and the angel. And so you just on 4 steps, you build a tableau. But then you say to people, as many people as they can, to put that in a window. Doesn't matter how many windows you have, and then let a central base know, who will keep via a Facebook group or whatever updated. And then it's just a case of saying to your parishioners, people in your parish, if they want to do it formally, we've got 300 windows displaying an Advent scene. Can you find them all? But if not, if you don't do it formally, people just wandering around will go, oh, look at all the Christmas story. So that's the broad and easiest way. The slightly harder way, which I think we're doing in our parish, I'm glad I'm not orchestrating it, is to just get people to sign up for our window. So we will just have 24 windows, and each window will be different. They won't be the same scene. There'll be different scenes in each window, and we will let people know that they can go and have a look. And it's based on a Scandinavian thing. If you're doing it not in lockdown, then you would have mince pies and hot chocolate served around the window and say hello to people. We obviously can't do that, so we're just doing the window element. So those 2 different models, one focused, one very broad.
Great, thanks, Harry. That was really practical and doable. Another question?
David Andrews, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you. It's the old problem of no singing at Christmas. As an organist, I'm no choir, so I'm looking for a meaningful alternative for a congregation. If they can't sing, is it really on to have recorded music? I just don't know how to provide a satisfying alternative.
Ruth.
Thanks for that one, Robin. How are you doing your services, David?
Well, we're planning, it would be a typical lessons and carols normally. Carols, the congregation is the choir. And if there's no can't sing, we're stuck.
I think we're going to have to realise that we do have limits with this, in that we aren't going to be able to sing all together this Advent, this Christmas time. I suspect if we're allowed in-person services, it still will be we have to do things socially distant, and probably won't be able to sing. I think we're therefore going to have to be creative, because people love singing round Christmas time. It's one of the things that people really enjoy doing. So I think we're going to have to use our resources, like the one on a church near you, and someone else has just put I Sing Worship has a fairly full range of carols as well. We're going to have to use recorded stuff or stuff in person, but it is going to be limited what we can do. Or we do pre-recorded stuff. So like I said, we're going to do a pre-recorded lessons and carols. But we're also planning on doing a slightly bonkers drive-in carol service, so that people will be able to drive in their cars like they would for a movie and have a carol service that they just sing within their cars, in a way to be as COVID safe as possible. So yeah, it's not going to be the same as we've always done it. It's just going to be a bit different. Robin's wanting to...
Very practical question that Alistair's asked. Can people sing outdoors? Do we know? Anybody got an answer to that?
I'm not 100% sure.
I think I'm not exactly positive on this, I must admit. Not with the guides in detail. I presume at the moment you can, obviously, in the lockdown that we are. But I've sort of heard noises that there may be potential for that closer to Christmas, but obviously that's all uncertain, and we can't predict what the government's going to allow and what they're not going to allow. So I suppose there's got to be a deal of flexibility, hasn't there, to our plans. That could be a possibility.
Outdoor things can be tremendous at Christmas time. We're having one in our local park. We've got the cafe opening up, and we will project people singing Christmas carols, and I think we'll just leave it to the people sitting around the tables drinking tea hot chocolate, and I suspect they will just start to sing a little bit and see what happens. Whether the police come and arrest us, I've no idea. But we could take one or two more questions, folks.
Judith, you've got your hand up. You just muted, Judith.
Sorry. Just to say, in our normal services, on Sunday service, we've been filing out at the end and singing the last hymn outside in the graveyard, and it's very, very popular because it's such a release to be able to sing.
It's also against the law.
Well, you just said you didn't think it was.
It's not against the law. It is not illegal to sing.
No.
It's against the guidance, which is a different thing.
Well, we still use masks, but we still sing outside. Anyway.
So it's clearly a room for manoeuvre there, folks, and we'll leave it to him be interpreted and applied locally, I think. But I think outside, the point is, outside carol services in the churchyard, car park, local woods, park, whatever, are stunning occasions. And if you do them, I'll be amazed if you get people to.
On this, I would seek guidance from the archdeacons and ultimately your bishops. If you, that would be my advice. It's very complicated. They did change the rules for remembrance. Technically, the remembrance was not a religious service; it was a civil service. And the government did mess that up a little bit. So I think we await for guidelines from the government and then see how the bishop wants you to implement them in your diocese. And then remembering that if you're ordained, you swore to obey your bishops. You might want to, if you willfully disobey them, that's fine, but don't accidentally disobey them. Well, it might not be fine.
Harry, this is increasingly becoming like a bid to be made a bishop or to earn real promotion. I really appreciate your civility to our leaders. We'll all interpret it locally. Thank you very much. Have we got another question? Have we got another question, Richard?
I'm just sort of trying to scan now. Oh, Brendan has got a hand up.
Yeah, it's not so much a question as a comment, really, because what really struck me was when Ruthie was talking about do something that was full of joy in her first little section. And I think that is key, because that's the one thing that we've had drained from us. Yeah, and that was really helpful for me.
One thing that we're going to do, which I really hope York Diocese Comms don't suddenly get at me for, is we've rewritten the words to classic carols to be 2020 appropriate, and we're going to film and show the and have someone sing and record these alternative carols and post them every Saturday before Advent Sundays, just to be a bit silly. And Christmas silliness has become one of the categories on our staff meeting, which I'm very proud that I helped introduce that, because I think, yeah, joy is one of the big things that we're missing. And the thing about Christmas being cancelled isn't true. It's just going to be different. And if we can spread joy, I think that'll be a really great thing.
Harry, what do you think about joy, brother?
Yeah, very important. And I think it's great that the Church of England has picked up on that nationally, and their campaign is Comfort and Joy. Let's speak that message of comfort and joy out, and focus on all the blessings that we have and the things that we can do. It's a really, really good observation. Let's be joyful.
For those who haven't seen, I'll just wave for you. This is basically what comfort and joy looks like. You'll have all had some information about this, and it's really worth sending off and getting some of the booklets and looking at some of the stuff that's available there. Comfort and joy. I think we can take one more question.
Sorry, I'm just having a look to see. I don't think there's anyone at the moment who's indicated.
Okay. Well, let's begin to draw things in, shall we? Inevitably on these occasions, we always seem to end up talking about what we can't do. You know, we can't sing carols, we can't do this. And there's actually still loads of stuff that we can do. You know, our Christmas treasure chest is still full. Whether we do it physically or online, we can still bring people into these amazing sacred buildings that we call our churches. And to us, we often forget how wonderful our buildings are, especially at Christmas time. We might not be able to sing carols in our buildings, but we can still light lots of candles. And with those candle lightings, we can play the most amazing music, not just carols, but other wonderful pieces of really atmospheric Christmas music. And as well as the buildings and the candles, we still have this amazing story to tell. In all its wonderful simplicity, and it's a picturesque story, we can still once again tell people about a dark night and shepherds being out on the hills and angels appearing and wise men traveling from a distance, and of Mary, a young mum, and Joseph and the birth of a baby. This story still warms the heart. So let's not forget what we can do and the great treasure that we have to share. I found doing Remembrance Sunday last Sunday, in a sense, for me, it was it was a bit of a rerun for Christmas, because we'd put a service online, and how do we invite people, how do we do any sort of, I got this lovely email on the Monday after. It was from someone in Carvley. Nobody in the church knows this person. It sounds like she moved into the parish about 18 months or a couple of years ago. She said she really enjoyed our service, and she looks forward to meeting with us and coming in person when lockdown is finished. She's never been to the church before. And I just think, one person, maybe this will represent a huge opening of the spiritual door for this one person. And I will be absolutely thrilled to bits if that happens. We started off by thinking Christmas, not routine, not just a huge piece of work, but a time of wonderment. And we want to offer something real for our congregation. Something real for our congregation, for our community, and then for our congregation. And because most of us watching this will be working like mad and trying to do this and not feeling very good at that, we also need to find a real sense of Christmas blessing for ourselves too. Where is this child who has been born? What a time for us all at every point and level to find something afresh of finding of this child who has been born. Okay, my friends. Oh, thank you again to Richard, Harry, and Ruth. I always quite like it when these lengthy sort of webinars finish a bit early. So we're going to finish a bit early there. And in great style, why don't we all unmute ourselves and have a gigantic cacophony of a grace? Brothers and sisters, as we lead our churches into this marvellous festival of wonderment, mystery, and of joy that we call Christmas time, may the grace of our Lord
Jesus Christ,
the love
the love of God,
Holy Spirit,
be with us all. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Sounded a bit absolutely fantastic. Thanks for coming, everybody, and keep in touch.
Thank you, Robin.
This is always here to help as much as we can. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.